Today on CityCast Nashville, Tennessee is ranked 49th on policies that benefit children and families, and a lack of childcare is one big reason why. I've experienced this crisis myself while trying to find a preschool for my daughter, and as we go into this new year, many new parents are experiencing the same challenges I did. I'm chatting with Nashville Post and Nashville Scene journalist Hannah Herner about why quality childcare is so hard to access in Nashville, and what lawmakers are trying to do about it. It's Monday, January 13th. I'm Hey Nashville newsletter editor Margaret Kingsbury, and this is what Nashville's talking about. Is there enough childcare available for Nashville's parents and caregivers?
That's actually one of the biggest issues, is like a scarcity of childcare. No matter if you have a lot of money to pay for it or not, there's actually not enough slots is something that parents are running into a lot.
So it's just as much a problem for wealthy parents as low-income parents?
I wouldn't say that it's equal between the two groups, but I would say even if you're like, I can pay however much is needed, those people will still have trouble finding it, let alone if someone doesn't really have a lot to put toward childcare or is looking for government assistance or places that offer the government assistance. That's an even harder barrier.
I know when I was looking for childcare, we visited a lot of places before we managed to find some. So why is it a problem? Why is there a childcare scarcity?
I would say it's a few things going on. When it comes to people who are providing the childcare, they're not paid a whole lot. So that workforce, people will leave it. They'll have trouble finding enough people just to keep that center open. Just in a quick search this morning, I saw that the average salary for a childcare provider in Tennessee is around $14 per hour. So that would be about $30,000 per year. And a lot of other places can pay you that much or more, like even doing some restaurant work and whatnot. People might choose to leave the field to do something like that has more regular hours, maybe is a little bit less stressful.
Yeah, I briefly worked in a daycare, and it was like 10. This was admittedly like more than 10 years ago, but I was making 10 or 11 an hour. It was not very much. And I don't know how people make ends meet. I was one of the youngest people working there, so I don't know how people with families are able to make ends meet with that kind of salary.
And then with childcare centers, rightfully so, there's a lot of regulations for them to be open, and, the rooms have to be a certain way. They have to be like high quality, and they have to have the food be high quality, and all of these regulations. And that makes for a pretty low margin for those centers. So that's what makes them kind of hard to survive in Nashville, especially.
I'm going to give you a hypothetical scenario. I have a pretend friend named Jenny, and she just found out she's pregnant. When should she start looking for childcare?
I was surprised to learn that people had been looking for childcare slots like before they became pregnant or right when they found out, which seemed like, oh, they're just very kind of type A. They're very like looking ahead. But I think there's like reason that they did that, with the scarcity issue. I would be like, well, look as soon as you can, because you want to be able to, when you have the baby, be able to make the choice you want to make, and not kind of be forced into changing your career or something if that's not what you wanted.
How long are some people on these wait lists for?
It can be up to a year or more. People are on wait list. And one of the struggles is sometimes you have to pay to join the wait list. And so that adds to the cost too.
And when I was doing this, I would get on wait lists and pay for them, and then I'd never hear from that childcare center. And I was told you kind of have to call periodically just to, make sure that you were still on the wait list and that they remembered who you were. And I thought that was really curious, because it's like, where did that money go if they weren't going through the wait list? But yeah, most of mine were like $50, but I think some of them get a lot more than that. So what are Tennessee's parental leave policies? How soon will Jenny have to get back to work?
The rule is from the federal government, the FMLA, is that you can have up to 12 weeks of unpaid family leave. So they don't have to pay you for that. It basically just means they can't fire you. Something that happened in 2023 at the state level is like state employees started to get 12 weeks of paid leave. So that can kind of like, I think could set into motion other private organizations offering that. It really varies by which company you work for. Like when I looked at some of the companies in Nashville, Kroger offers 10 to 12 weeks. Blue Cross Blue Shield offers 8 weeks.
Paid or unpaid?
Paid.
Okay.
So, I mean, other companies are getting with it, but it's very conditional on the company. I mean, the company I work for only offers 2 weeks of paid leave. And so I really hope that continues to change, but it would depend on Jenny's company in this instance.
But there's no required paid leave in Tennessee right now. Is that correct?
No, they don't have to.
Yeah.
Pay you for anything.
And I'll add about FMLA, it has to meet certain conditions for you to qualify. So when I got pregnant, neither my husband nor I qualified for FMLA because even though I was working 50 hours a week, and so was he had been working for the company less than a year. So you have to be working for the company at least 1 year. And then I was working multiple part-time jobs, and you have to be a full-time employee. And then companies also have to have so many employees to qualify. So if you work for a smaller company, they are not required to give you FMLA.
Wow. Yeah, that's such a gap that's going on there.
Okay, let's go back to Jenny. According to the Census Bureau, the median household income in Tennessee or Nashville is $75,197 a year. Let's say that's how much Jenny makes. How much will full-time childcare cost her?
Okay, so I just got the most recent numbers on this. It varies a little bit by like what type of childcare you're gonna choose, but it can be upwards of $11,000 or $12,000 for an infant, and then for a toddler around $11,000. So I think where people really run into trouble is like, it's not that uncommon to have a toddler and an infant, and those two together can really take like a big chunk of your income. In order to be considered like not cost burden, it would only be 7% of her income per year. So I think that could work okay if she only had the one child. But with 2 children, yeah, she's definitely be cost burdened by childcare.
Yeah, that would be $22,000 or $23,000 a year if you had 2 kids. Just imagine if you had a third there.
Yeah.
Which is not out of, the ordinary. A lot of people have families that size. So yeah, that's kind of wild. So you mentioned types of childcare. What are the types of childcare?
Yeah, so there's a few different routes you can go. I mean, my reporting has focused the most on center-based childcare centers like Fanny Battle Day Home, and Martha O'Brien Center has one as well, places like that. That's with like a larger group. There's also family childcare that goes on in people's homes, and they can get certified. I believe that's like less than 10 children in the home that they can do. The thing with that is I would just really make sure that it is certified. I mean, there's a lot of kind of just people out of desperation, understandably will take their child to uncertified daycare, and there's just a lot you don't know, and there's definitely danger there. So I notice a lot of people will do nanny sharing these days. So that's something like if they know someone who has a child around the same age that can kind of share a nanny. But those are the main 3 that I've encountered. And I think that the nanny by far, costs the most, followed by the center-based and then family childcare third.
Let's say Jenny doesn't make that much. Let's say she's lower income, makes $35,000 or $30,000 a year. What are her options then for paying for childcare?
One program that the state does is called Smart Steps, and that is for people 85% and below of the area median income. And that's a cool program in a vacuum, and it does help a lot of people. What I will say is the limits of that is not every childcare center will accept the Smart Steps voucher. They get the voucher and they don't always accept it. Just a lot of it is because of, like I mentioned, the profit margins, and the voucher is not always measuring up to how much they could get if someone just paid for it. And so they are kind of forced not to take them. There's been some bills that have come out to try to raise the amount that the childcare centers would get paid with that voucher, and also include more families in it, because we're seeing how many families are burdened, up to 100% of the area median income. That's something Charlene Oliver pitched during the legislative session. None of that ended up happening. But I just wanted to point out, some changes she's been trying to make with Smart Steps specifically.
Are there any changes that you know of for the next legislative session? Are they considering anything to help Nashville parents or Tennessee parents?
I anticipate that Senator Oliver will bring some more bills related to this. I mean, this is a topic she's passionate about as a mother of two young kids herself.
I'm going to backtrack a little bit and ask a question. Are there requirements for childcare establishments on how many vouchers they have to accept?
No, with that's kind of interesting. Like if people accept them, it's more just like a mission thing. For Fanny Battle, that's just something that they care about. They would say, we want to have at least 30% low income families here, families that would be eligible for a voucher. So that's just something they keep to. And when I interviewed them or talked to some of the leaders there, they described that it's actually challenging to keep that ratio because so many more affluent parents are like, can I please have this slot? And they're like, they will turn people away to make sure that they keep to the mission of keeping low-income families served there.
And just to be clear, Fanny Battle is a childcare center.
Mm-hmm, yeah, in East Nashville. So they've been around for a really long time, and they are just one of the people that I talked to for my story because I think East Nashville really represents a lot of different income levels, and they're really trying to serve all of them. They've been really candid about just the struggles of keeping a center like that up and running.
Does Nashville have any income-based preschool options if Jenny has a 4-year-old? I know some states have free early childcare. Is Tennessee one of those states?
I know that we offer Head Start in Tennessee, but I know that there's also kind of a scarcity of slots there. There's been some things that have come up when I was watching the budget proposals for the Department of Children's Services to try to just bolster those amount of slots so they can serve more children.
Yeah, I remember when I was looking, those slots filled up super fast. How does Tennessee compare to other states when it comes to childcare access and affordability?
Tennessee tends to be ranked pretty low when it comes to things like this because of what's going on with not having enough Head Start slots, not having enough childcare slots. I wrote a bit about the Prenatal to 3 Policy Impact Center. This is something that Vanderbilt University does, and they actually found that Tennessee ranks 49th when it comes to policies that benefit families and children, and we're talking about really young children from conception to age 3 here.
That's not a good stat.
No, we are certainly at the bottom there, and I mean, there's a few things that we could work on that also benefit children while it's not childcare specifically. Having Medicaid coverage that makes for healthier parents, that also benefits children. The statewide paid family and medical leave, we don't have something like that. Same for minimum wage of at least $10 per hour. If you have children, you really are going to need more than that really to support them. And there's also state earned income tax credit. That's something that benefits young families, I think, too. So those are 4 policies that center looks at. And, because Tennessee doesn't implement any of those, that kind of puts us at the bottom of the ranking. There's stuff that can be done. So hopefully we can climb up that ranking there, but it's not looking so good lately.
What is that earned income credit that you mentioned?
So the earned income tax credit is for low to moderate income workers and families to get a tax break. So that would really benefit the people that we're kind of talking about here, the young families, to be able to have that little extra help when they need it more.
Let's just imagine the perfect world here for Jenny. What would that look like in terms of parental policies and childcare policies? If Jenny's pregnant, what would the perfect scenario look like?
I mean, one thing that I really feel like I need to mention here is ideally everything is healthy for Jenny. She's not having any issues. If things really go south, even if, sadly that baby won't survive for some reason, we have such strict abortion laws in Tennessee that, so I'm starting with Jenny being like healthy and this baby is like going to be born and be okay.
Yeah.
So that's something that maybe Jenny is thinking about in this case. But yeah, I think ideally she would have 12 weeks of paid leave from her job. And some companies do more than that, but I would say 12 is like a good thing to root for. And really, she would have had a slot already reserved at a daycare center in Nashville, and they will know when the baby's due, and they will like have that all set up for her. Ideally, that daycare center doesn't cost any more than, I guess, based on her income, $70,000, so less than $10,000 a year for that one child, and that she's able to some of the like soft skills things that will happen with pregnancy, that she's able to go back to work and like still continue on in the way that she wanted to, and like she's not passed over for things because of kids or missing things from a professional level, but also that she's able to get postnatal care and they're able to check on her and make sure that she's not dealing with any postnatal depression and things. I mean, that stuff's very common too. So I think one thing that Nashvillians often don't have is family close by, because a lot of us come from other places. And I think really, ideally, you can bypass the whole thing because you have family to do it or a community to do it for you. But in getting childcare, there is definitely a challenge.
Most of the people I know with children, their parents are still working. They haven't retired yet. So the whole have the grandparents watch them. Well, grandparents are still working, they are not of retirement age.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, you kind of, it's a tough decision of like, I think that about that a lot of we're at a place in feminism and gender roles where we want women to be able to choose. Do I want to work? Do I want to stay home with the kids? And it's just tough if the childcare is close to half of your income, it doesn't really feel like that same choice. If it doesn't make sense at all financially, I think it's unfortunate that people are put in that position.
Yeah. I'm going to leave on one last question. So what advice would you have for Nashville's parents today?
I want to point out, I don't have a child myself. I've just reported on this. Yeah. And I've reported on this since 2018. So it's been helpful context to me to know that people have struggled to find daycare slots, for several years. It's not just now, but I think what's good now is we know more about each other's home lives with work from home. We know that when people are struggling with childcare, people are more honest about that at work and it comes up more. So I guess my advice to parents would be to talk to other parents because they know what you're going through. And I think that's important, but also be really judicious about getting on waiting lists and trying to find places. I think it's just not something that you want to be scrambling to do at the end when you're trying to get back into the workforce, if that's what you choose to do. Definitely try to work ahead and look into if you need those voucher programs and get signed up for those. But yeah, there's been a lot of money coming into the childcare space from a state and a federal level. So hopefully that will catch up and people will be willing to start more childcare centers, and that will really make the biggest difference.
That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Nashville newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.